Hi, I'm Louise, also known as the modern midwife. I am, of course, a midwife, and I'm also a mum to my gorgeous baby girl, Georgie. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Stephanie Ooi, who is a GP and also a mum of two. And I'm also joined by Rachel Burford, who is a former England rugby player and current Quins player. So there's so much stigma attached to periods, isn't there? And I don't really know why that is. Recently, well, I feel like it was recently anyway, actually it was a year ago yesterday, that I had my first baby. So of course, I hadn't had a period for the entire pregnancy, and then I breastfed and I didn't get a period for several months after that. I think it was about 8 months after that. And I went on holiday, didn't even consider it, was on holiday with my family in Cornwall, walking the dogs with my dad, and then suddenly I came on my period, and the sheer horror of that, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? How am I going to tell him? Do I have to tell him? Like, you know, I was desperately trying to hide it and thinking, where am I going to go? And luckily there were some public toilets there. So I quickly went in there and there were no products available. So I just shoved some tissue down there and just had to wait until I got home. And it was really embarrassing. And the rest of the dog walk, I was thinking, am I going to leak? Like, you know, maybe I should just tell him anyway. And then I got home and I was like, Catherine, to my sister, I've just come on my period on a dog walk with Dad. Like, really traumatised by the whole thing. And she was like, well, why didn't you just tell him? And I'm a full grown woman, you know, I'm a midwife professionally, so he knows what I do and he knows that I had a baby. But I just felt like I couldn't be honest about something that happens to the majority of women every single month. And yeah, it was really embarrassing. Have any of you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, I would like to think that most of us have probably gone through the same thing. You know, that kind of horror of when you get your period and you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my goodness, what do? I don't have anything with me. So can very much resonate with that type of experience. Certainly if I think back to when my first period was, I remember coming out of the bathroom, again, equally like horrified and thinking, what on earth do I do? The first person I saw was my dad, poor guy. And I was like, Dad, I've got my period. And he just was also in a bit of a panic and just said, okay, well, your mum's in the bedroom. Why don't you just go speak to her? And I think that it just starts from there, isn't it? Where people don't necessarily know what to say or what to do. And it can just take you, it can just be really unexpected. And you can feel a little bit embarrassed. Well, I say a little bit, quite embarrassed about it as well. And I think that thinking back to when you have your period during childhood as well, it's quite daunting and overwhelming to go through. What sort of experience did you have?
I was 11 when I started my cycle, and my mum and my sister, they were all away because they all played rugby and they were away on tour. So I was staying with my sister, and we had plans for the weekend to go swimming, and then all of a sudden I wake up and it's happened, and I'm like, oh. So my sister's gone down the shop, got me some products and stuff, and then that was it. Swimming was off. So I think there's so much stigma attached to the fact that, yes, it's embarrassing and people won't talk about it, or quickly talk to your mum or talk to somebody else. But also attached to it is, oh, you can't do anything. Right, go in your room, lock yourself up. You can't go out for the day. You can't get back under the duvet. You can't do any activity. There's so much of that attached to it as well, which is something that just is really damaging for young girls, women, anybody who goes through it, because that's not the case. No. You don't need to be stopping doing things.
In terms of like symptoms, as you just mentioned, there's that kind of idea that you have to stop everything when you're on your period, and 43% of women say that they stop all form of exercise because they're on their period. And for you, Rachel, obviously doing what you do as a professional rugby player, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing because you can't avoid it. You know, it happens every month to us, and, you know, we play in major tournaments all around the world, and what if that time I'm on my period during the biggest tournament? I'm not going to go, oh, actually, I'm not going to play. So we want to be role models, and if, you know, we're stepping away from this sport because we're on our period, or, you know, in certain phases, then that's not sending a good message anywhere else.
Is there anything else that you think, why we just put up with it and we don't talk about it?
I think it must be a lack of education and, you know, what you're exposed to in childhood. That's kind of got to be it. It's something that, like you said, is thought of as dirty. You know, you can get embarrassed about it. There are so many negative connotations off the back of it, and it's always something that I think people dread on a monthly basis as well. And particularly those who've got really debilitating symptoms with periods, they just, you know, it can take up a week, 2 weeks of the month. And so I think that it's just not spoken about enough. I think people don't understand that, okay, well, if I've got symptoms, there's actually things that can be done about it. People just think, you know, well, that's just how it is. And so I'm just going to have to put up with it. And so I think that trying to change the conversation about it, the narrative as a society, you know, what does having periods mean? What are the symptoms that you can get with it? I think that that's so important and really key to kind of emphasise to girls and boys that are growing up that, you know, this is what the information is, and there is stuff that can be done about it if you're struggling.
What is talked about is all the negative stuff. You don't talk about the miracle of why you have one, what that actually means. Like, why don't we talk about that and celebrate that fact? I think so much negativity and scaremongery, or you know, just kind of putting it in a wrong light is huge. And then I think the other side of it is, like you both said, is it just doesn't get talked about. Like, my mum didn't even really talk to me when I was younger, and like, we've got to start changing that narrative and actually just having open conversations with the men in the households as well, not just with the females, because in order to have a big shift, it's not going to just require women to talk about it. It's going to require everybody to understand it to a different level, to then make it normal and acceptable. And then all of a sudden, maybe women will stop going, oh, I'll just sit back and accept this because it is what it is. I go through it and I'm a woman, so I have to accept it. Well, actually, you don't have to. And I think they're the two areas, that young education, but they kind of link together. If you're having conversations nice and early, and that education piece, you do that at a young age, then, you know, as time moves on, we're not forcing a conversation to be had because it's naturally happening.
Exactly. And I think most women as well don't link blood loss and fatigue after their period. And even as a midwife, it's a bit embarrassing for me to admit this, but even as a midwife in my early 20s, I too didn't link those, and having all of the knowledge that I have and all of the information I'd give women in regards to pregnancy and trying to make sure that they are increasing their iron intake so that we can prevent anemia throughout pregnancy, because during pregnancy your blood volume, as you well know, Stephanie, increases by up to 50%. So that's a significant increase, and that baby needs a lot of oxygen-rich blood, which is why it's really important to be mindful of your iron intake and to support your body with supplementation. But a lot of women don't make that link between blood loss every month and feeling fatigue, and getting on top of that by taking an iron supplement such as active iron, because that can really help you not just have to put up with those symptoms and think, well, actually, as you said, this is just how I'm going to feel every month because it's part and parcel of being a woman. And that's why I think, you know, this conversation today and this campaign, Better Days Period, is so crucial in changing that, in starting these conversations amongst women and empowering them to say, actually, no, I am going to go and seek advice from a healthcare professional. I'm going to see my GP. I'm going to track my cycle. I'm going to understand my body better. And I'm also going to get on top of my health and well-being by making sure that my body is getting everything that it needs in terms of diet, nutrition and supplements.
The symptoms that low iron can cause, like tiredness and fatigue, they're quite generalised, aren't they? And I think I see so many people that come in and say, I'm feeling really tired, and it's never really just one thing. There are lots of factors. You know, life is very busy nowadays, and, you know, lots of people have got things going on, but thinking about iron levels is probably quite far down on, and your periods is quite far down on people's list of things that it could be. But actually, it's quite an easy thing to do and to manage. You know, obviously you can try and get iron through diet, and it is possible, but actually it's quite difficult because of the, you know, iron content of things, but also the way that it's absorbed in the body. And so red meat, for example, is really iron rich. But what if you're vegetarian or vegan and you're unable to get that intake? Looking to other sources like iron supplementation is an easy thing to do. But I think, again, like I said, not many people would think about it.
I mean, most people are tired and exhausted without your period. So then when you get that on top, so to have something that is able to support that, to, pull you out of it or support you during when even more tiredness comes around, then, it is a really simple solution that's accessible as well for everybody.
Yes.
And, I think it's just a small way for a big impact, isn't it? And I think that's the messaging we've got to keep trying to get across, that there are small incentives and ways that actually can really support you during your cycle, whatever phase you're in.
Yeah, like you said, it's a quick, kind of easy solution to do. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy some iron supplements that are kind and gentle on the stomach, and then you can take them and just see how you feel. And I think a lot of people will benefit from that supportive function that the supplements have.
So in relation to statistics, Active Iron actually undertook a clinical trial that showed some really fantastic results in relation to their product. It showed that it is in fact 6 times less likely to cause gut irritation, which I think is a massive benefit to everyone. And I'm sure that you will know that as a GP, because when you prescribe iron to your patients, quite often they will report being in discomfort and constipation as a real symptom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the side effects from iron tablets, not everyone will get them, but they are very common. So constipation, gut irritation as well. So if something like Active Iron means that you're less likely to have those symptoms, then you're more likely to comply with the regime as well and be able to take it longer term. And not only that, but it's also been clinically proven to increase iron stores by 94%. So that's a real bonus as well.
The fantastic thing about Active Iron is that it's both kind and strong, and that it is absorbed really well in the gut, so you haven't got that free-floating iron causing those additional symptoms. So, I thought that was a really fantastic kind of angle that they took of real interest rather than just, selling a product. That it is important that we look into exactly what we're selling, why we are selling it, and how it impacts women's lives on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And the other thing that I found quite shocking that Active Iron revealed was that over half of women have never sought any support or advice from a healthcare professional in relation to the symptoms that they experience. And I found that fairly shocking. As a GP, what do you think about that statistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. That was the statistic that really stood out to me, because I guess I'm the one on the other side of the consultation table, and I'm thinking, right, people would know when to come in. But obviously you realise that that's just not the case. And I think in general, if you've got a health condition or there's a symptom that you're not sure about, I think a lot of people would be reluctant or have some reservation or just not end up going. And then when you add in the fact that it's women's health, like you said, there's like taboos around it, a lack of knowledge, then I think, in a way, I'm not surprised actually that it is that many people. Yeah. And I think that it's a real shame as well, because you just think, gosh, there must be, I do see people in clinic talking about problems with their periods, and I'm so glad that they've come. And I think I am gradually seeing more and more women coming, but you just think, well, who are the women out there that are just putting up with this and don't realise?
When you understand your cycle, as we've, spoke a bit about tracking your cycle, when you understand it, you will really know when you're at your kind of peak and when you're able to really push your body and push yourself. And equally, you will also know when it's not the time to be pushing your body, because actually you do need to recuperate. You do need to be a little bit more gentle on yourself. So when you understand that, you can really get the best out of yourself in every scenario, I guess, not just in sport and in rugby, in your professional, in your career, in your relationships. And that's something that has really helped me personally, is understanding my body.
It can actually be such a superpower for us. Yeah. And I think that's such a big trick, and it blows my mind how, having played rugby for a number of years at the elite level, we always looking for that little 1% that the other team aren't doing, or always trying to, whether that's nutrition, the new sportswear, the new kit, the certain hours of going to sleep, or, all these like weird and wonderful things to improve your performance, but never have we dove into something that makes up the entire, you know, it's not just when you're on your period, it's before, it's after, there's 4 different phases, and how do you use and maximise all of those? So we're trying to put a spin on it, and especially in young girls, and say this can be a superpower for you. You can use this to your advantage, not disadvantage. And I think if we can shape those messages, then that really does shout, you know, better days and better periods for young girls, because what we want to do is, yes, our generation, we're talking about it more, but it's the younger generation that need to grow up with it being normal and becoming normalised, so that when, you know, in 20, 30 years' time, there aren't campaigns that are needed, because it's out there, it's spoken about, there's education, and I think that's the aspiration, to get to that point.
I really love that, actually, that saying that this can be your superpower, because I think that's the thing. And you take a step back and you think, why do periods exist? You know, the whole point is reproduction and the ability to create these new human beings. It's actually incredible, and yet for so long we've been conditioned in a way through, you know, because of lots of different factors, to think that actually it's a real negative. But I love that kind of angle and reframing it, because that's exactly what it is.
No, really, really good point. Thank you so much. It's been so good to talk to you about everything period related, because as we've said, this isn't a conversation that we often have, but in fact it is one that I think we should be continuing on. So thanks so much for chatting today and for your honesty.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it was a really, really great discussion.
Great pleasure to be a part of it, and let's just keep making sure these conversations happen.